Hi everyone and welcome to a new episode of Echo-Based Gaming. In this video I'm going to show off my Grand Moff Tarkin deck list that I've been working on. I started working on this deck actually before the release of this game when I was practicing for the pre-releases. I stumbled upon a great combination of the Tarkin ability with the powerful aggression units, and I thought that this combo was really powerful, especially with units like the Fifth Brother. That works great with the extra experience tokens to buff his HP and to make it a really powerful unit, and also some other aggression units. And this is the first video of a series of videos where I'm going to talk about leaders in this game that maybe are a little bit underrepresented in the format at the moment, because their counterparts of the leaders that they share an aspect with are just a little bit better. So the next video, for instance, I'm going to talk about Cassian. Most people play the Sabine leader if they go heroism aggression, but I also think Cassian brings a lot to the table, so I want to show off my Cassian deck that I'm currently working on. But for now, let's dive into the Tarkin deck and see what we are working with. So the first thing that we are going to talk about is the base. So I actually started with the 30 health base for this deck, because I thought I needed it for the Sabine match or other aggro decks like aggro Boba Fett that were just a little bit too fast for this deck. But after a little bit of practicing, I do think that Tarkin Town is the way to go, especially because there are some units that interact with the Tarkin Town epic action to do that extra 3 damage to already damaged units. So I will go over those units later in this video. But I think the synergy is there, and therefore I chose to go with Tarkin Town for this deck. But for now, let's talk about my Grand Moff Tarkin deck. And as icing on the cake, I actually, in my first booster box, I opened this beautiful showcase of Tarkin. So that was just another reason to build a deck with Tarkin, and today I'm going to show it to you. So let's start off with a 1-cost unit, the Death Star Stormtrooper. I think this is a really powerful 1-drop on your first turn. With the 3 power stats is just a nice unit, especially because it's only 1 resources, and so you can still activate the Tarkin ability for the other resource. So you make this Stormtrooper a 4/2, and you have a really powerful unit on the board on your first turn. You do have to be careful when to use the Tarkin ability on the first turn, especially if you play against another Imperial deck or a Rebel deck. So you don't want them to take the initiative. A powerful round 2 play is something like the Fleet Lieutenant or the Snowtrooper Lieutenant. So you want to prevent your opponent from being able to play this unit, and therefore I think taking the initiative is better instead of activating the Tarkin ability. So you can play the Snowtrooper Lieutenant yourself, or just get rid of the unit that they played so they cannot activate the Fleet Lieutenant or the Snowtrooper Lieutenant. So you do have to be careful when to trigger his ability, because it is another action. So your opponent can take the initiative when they play, for instance, a 2-cost unit, so they only have 1 action on this first turn, whether you have 2. So really think, when do I need to take the initiative and be faster than my opponent on the second turn, or when do you have more time to activate Tarkin ability? For instance, if you play against some slower mid-range decks, you do have this time to actually buff your Stormtrooper or your TIE Fighter, which is another 1-cost that we play, I'm going to talk about later. So the next card is the First Legion Snowtrooper. I do play 2 copies of this card in my deck. It's just a powerful 2-cost unit that deals extra damage to already damaged units. So this is one of those units that also works great with Tarkin Town, so you can deal a lot of damage to an already damaged unit from your opponent. So if they play powerful units or Star Destroyers, for instance, you can actually deal a lot of damage when they are already damaged. And the added overwhelm is great to chip a little bit from your opponent's base. So that's why I included 2 copies of this card in my deck. The next 2-cost is the Seasoned Shore Trooper. It's another powerful 2-cost with the stat line of 2/3. And why I like this Seasoned Shore Trooper is because it's a 2-cost card that keeps his value mid to late game. When you have 6 or more resources, this becomes a 4-3. So this is a 2-cost unit that you're more than happy to play later on the game. And what's even more powerful about the Shore Trooper is that the bonus of the 2 attack value or the 2 power value is not just on attack, but it's just an increase of +2 on the attack value, or power value I should say. So even on defense it becomes a 4 power unit. I already talked about this card, the Snow Trooper Lieutenant. If you play an Imperial Trooper deck, I think this is an auto-include. So the action economy, when you play this card, you can deal immediately damage with another unit. The extra 2 power value that that unit gets is just a big bonus, and you can deal a lot of damage. So it's the ideal turn to play when you play the TIE Fighter or the Stormtrooper on your first turn. Then the Cell Block Guard, a 3-cost unit with Sentinel, is there to protect your valuable units. So units like the 5th Brother, Darth Vader or the 7th Sister, if you already gave them some experience tokens, they get a real target on their back. And this is just there to protect them and to make it harder for your opponent to go after those valuable units. So that's why I included 3 copies of the Cell Block Guard. Just a really powerful Sentinel and there to protect your units. The 5th Brother, the card that actually inspired me to build this deck. I think it's just a really powerful card, especially in combination with the experience tokens from Tarkin. If you increase his HP, you get more out of his ability and deal more damage. And especially his on-attack ability to deal another damage to another unit works well with either Tarkin Town or the Snow Trooper. So that's a nice combo. And again, the 5th Brother is also a card why I chose Tarkin Town over the 30 health base, because it's quite easy to deal damage to multiple units from your opponent, so you can trigger Tarkin Town or the Snow Trooper more easily. And yeah, it's just a great unit for 3. So then General Veers, another 3-cost. I think if you play an Imperial deck, General Veers is an auto-include, buffing your Imperial units even more. So all the units that I play are Imperials, either on the ground or in space. So you can actually get a lot of bonuses from General Veers in this deck. And yeah, I think therefore it's an auto-include if you build an Imperial deck. And for just 3, you get a big bonus. So the Super Laser Technician, I think this is again also an auto-include if you play Command Villainy, and is just there to reliably be able to play Darth Vader, for instance, and your bigger units. If you included Emperor Palpatine in your deck, so you can play them reliably, even against fast decks like Sabine, like Boba Fett, you can still go up to that resource threshold of 7 or 8. And yeah, just a really powerful unit for Command Villainy. And yeah, that's why I think it's an auto-include. So then the 7th Sister, a 5-cost ground unit that can again also deal damage to another unit from your opponent. And therefore again you can trigger Tarkin Town, the Snow Trooper, or even deal more damage with the 5th Brother. It's also the only unit in this deck that has Saboteur. So if your opponent plays Sentinels or units with a lot of shields, this is a great unit to counter those. And yeah, therefore I included her in this deck. And it's just a nice synergy with the Tarkin Town, but also the other units that you play that deal damage to multiple units and not only just on attack. Darth Vader, I still think one of the most powerful cards in the first set. And if you go the Command Villainy route, I always include Darth Vader in my deck. Not only for his great stat line, but his when played ability comes in clutch in this deck, because we do play a lot of low-cost units. So you can actually reliably trigger his effect and have some great combinations. So for instance with the Snow Trooper Lieutenant, so you play Darth Vader, trigger his when played effect. With his when played effect you play the Snow Trooper Lieutenant. Then the when played effect of the Snow Trooper Lieutenant triggers. So you can attack with another Imperial unit that gets a buffed power stat. And after that you can trigger the ambush from Darth Vader. So you can actually get a lot of value out of just playing the Darth Vader and deal a lot of damage to your opponent base or big units. So that's why I really like the Darth Vader, and I think that he's a really powerful unit. So that's the ground package, 30 units in total. So now we move into space. I do think that the aggression space package is pretty much solved, either for villainy and also for heroism. So in this deck we play a TIE Fighter, another 1 cost. So basically the same rules apply to the TIE Fighter and the Death Star Stormtrooper. It's just a cheap 1 cost unit that you can drop on your first turn and also buff with an experience tokens from Tarkin. So you can get more space presence from the start. So then the Imperial Interceptor, a 4 cost space unit for the Imperials. Just a really powerful card. You get immediate value out of the Interceptor with this when played effect. So you can either take out lower cost units or lower HP units from your opponent. Or again, it's another unit that can put damage on another unit, so you can trigger Tarkin Town. So that's again a nice combination, and yeah, just a really powerful space unit. Then the TIE Advanced. I think if you play an Imperial deck, you always play the TIE Advanced. I mean, you're already giving a lot of experience tokens to Imperial units, and with this TIE Advanced you give 2 extra experience tokens, and it's in space or on the ground, so you can really pick and choose where you need these experience tokens, and therefore it's really flexible and powerful. And then the Rootless Raider, a 6 cost, again a really powerful space unit with his when played and when defeated ability to deal 2 damage to an enemy base, and again another unit that also deals damage to an enemy unit. So you start to see a pattern in this deck list, units that deal a lot of damage to different enemy units. So, and therefore I think that the Tarkin Town is the base for a deck like this. So you can get a lot of value out of the epic action. Yeah, so that is the space package. Like I said, I think that you will see this space package in a lot of aggression villainy decks, just as in the aggression heroism decks. You will see the X-Wing, the Wing Leader, the A-Wing and the Red 3. That's the package for aggression heroism, and this is the package for aggression villainy, I think. So that's 12 space units in total. So for events, I play maximum firepower 3 times. So you do play a lot of Imperial units, and this event works really well with your Imperial units, especially because you play a lot of experience tokens. So you buff the power value of your units by a lot, and therefore with maximum firepower you're able to deal a lot of damage. Because with cards like this, you use the boosted power stat of your cards by the experience tokens, so you can deal out a lot of damage. So the same goes for Overwhelming Barrage, another powerful unit that buffs your unit by +2/+2 for this phase, and then you are able to deal damage equal to the power stat. So again, you already increasing the power stat of your units, and with the Overwhelming Barrage you increase it even more, and then you deal damage to the power stat itself, so you are able to defeat a lot of powerful units with this card for 5 resources, and then you are able to attack with that same unit to deal even more damage. So for these 2 events you do need units on the board, and so I also included Force Choke to get rid of a lot of annoying units. You're able to deal 5 damage to a non-vehicle unit. We also play a lot of Force users to get the discounts with the 5th Brother, the 7th Sister and Darth Vader. So most of the time this is an event that you can play for 1, and you don't need units on the board to play this event, so you can just deal 5 damage to a non-vehicle unit, and again another card that deals damage to a unit, and finish it off with something like the Tarkin Town or the Snowtrooper Lieutenant. Yeah, so that is the deck, my 50 card deck. So for the sideboard, I included 1 copy of Emperor Palpatine in my sideboard. It's a really powerful card, especially his when played effect to again deal damage to units. So it works well in this deck, but against hyper aggressive decks like Sabine and Boba Fett, I do think that 8 resources is a lot for this deck. Even though you play super late technicians, you not always find them on time, and I felt like in those matches when I had Emperor Palpatine in my hand, I either already lost the game or I already was ahead in the game and I could finish it with the units on the board. So that's why I swapped him to the side deck, and because he is really powerful against decks that prefer to go mid to late game, then it's a powerful finisher and you reliably get to the 8 resources threshold for a card like Palpatine. So because Palpatine is in the sideboard, I also swapped the Emperor's Royal Guard to the sideboard. It originally was in my deck. Because Tarkin, our leader, is an official. The Emperor's Royal Guard also gets Sentinel when Tarkin is on the board. So on paper it's a really powerful card in combination with our leader. So the timing with just one official in your deck is a little bit off. So either Tarkin was already dead when I drew my Royal Guards, and then the Royal Guard become useless basically. Because for 3 there are other powerful cards, for instance the Celbular Guard with a guaranteed Sentinel is in my opinion more reliable than the Royal Guard. But if you play Palpatine, you have another official on the board, so the chances of the Emperor's Royal Guard getting Sentinel are increased, and therefore I do play them in my sideboard. So then 2 copies of Wolf with his ability, his when played an on-attack ability, so your opponent cannot heal their base. It's great against decks like Iden Versio or Chewie that play a lot of units with Restore. I always put Wolf in my deck when I play against those decks because it's just really powerful and you basically shut down their win condition because they cannot heal their base anymore, or at least for 1, maybe 2 turns. It also has Saboteur. The deck itself only plays 1 Saboteur, the 7th Sister, so that's another great benefit of Wolf, to add another Saboteur against decks, because usually these decks also play Sentinels and Shields, so it's just a really powerful card against decks like that. So that's why Wolf is in my sideboard. So for the same reason, actually 3 copies of Precision Fire against decks that play a lot of Sentinel and Shields, like Luke Skywalker or just Vigilance deck in general. Again, like I said, only the 7th Sister has Saboteur in my deck. So with Precision Fire, I'm able to give Saboteur to a unit that is on the board. And just for 1 resource, I think that's nice to deal with the annoying Sentinel units or units with shields on them. And I also play a lot of Troopers in this deck, so the added +2 power is a nice bonus for a card like this in a Trooper deck. And last, the Power Failure in my side deck. They are basically there for either the mirror match. If your opponent puts too much experience tokens on 1 unit, I can punish them by playing Power Failure. So it works against the mirror match. It works against decks that play a lot of shields, upgrades itself, like Chirrut plays lightsabers, for instance. And yeah, then it's a great deck to punish your opponent for putting too much upgrades on 1 unit and not spread them out among their units. So that's my sideboard, and that is the deck in general. So I think that the biggest weakness of this deck is decks that have a lot of spot removal. So Cunning and Vigilance decks that play things like Power of the Dark Side, Vanquish, Takedown, Waylay, or cards that exhaust your units. And it's hard for this deck to play against those decks, because the only thing that you can do against this is just time when you play your units more efficiently. So for instance, always prevent playing your powerful units when you don't have units on the board, so they cannot trigger Power of the Dark Side, or put experience tokens on your powerful units so they get more than 5 HP, so they cannot play Vanquish or Takedown. And the last thing that you can do against decks like this is take the initiative more frequently than you're used to. So maybe skip an attack or skip an action to take the initiative. So the first thing that you can do on your next turn is attack with your most powerful units. Or play a maximum firepower when you still have 2 units on the board. Or Overwhelming Barrage when you still have a unit on the board. And you can deal damage to your opponent's base or to their annoying unit before they can exhaust your unit or bounce it back to your hand or just defeat it. So I think that's also something that you have to do when you play against deck with a lot of spot removal, control decks like Tron for instance, taking the initiative more regularly. So when they play their events, they become less efficient than they are used to, so they don't get the maximum value out of those cards. So I think that's pretty much the only thing that you can do against cards like that, because you cannot prevent them from playing those events. So the only thing that you can do is make those events less efficient for them, because they cannot exhaust your most powerful unit anymore because you already attack with it. And that's how I counter these decks. Just take the initiative and start your turn by doing as much damage as possible that they cannot prevent anymore. And if you can do that consistently, you can sneak in enough damage to win the game. So that's the deck with Sideboard, a little bit of strategy. So if you haven't tried a Tarkin deck yourself, please do. Copy this deck list and bring it to your locals and let me know how it went. If you build Tarkin yourself and you have different cards in your deck, please let me know in the comments. So maybe you have a nice card that I haven't thought about myself and I can try your version of Tarkin and see how it goes. So this is my first deck tag. So like I mentioned earlier in this video, I'm going to do more deck tags for Star Wars Unlimited, and the next one is going to be about Cassian. So stay tuned for that. And if you enjoyed this video, please like, comment and subscribe so you don't miss those other deck tags and other videos that we're planning to do. And yeah, hopefully see you then and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.